Dean, a huge welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me as a guest. I've never really considered myself as a leader, but some of your other guests certainly are.
Oh, you're the ultimate leader. And I really firmly believe leadership starts with self. We can't lead others until we lead ourselves. And when we start to look at your achievements, your mindset, your grit, I mean, you're the ultimate self leader. So before we get into that, I'd love to ask you, when you think of leadership, what comes to mind?
I think to me, a leader is someone who sets a good example. And I think that your opening comment speaks to me because I'm Greek and I studied classics. And Socrates famously said to Plato, before you go about changing the world, change yourself. And I think what you said speaks so much to that point.
That's incredible. And it's interesting. So for the listener that's new to you, I want to just give them one very clear fact. You ran 50 marathons in all 50 US states in 50 consecutive days, right?
And I'm still alive somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. How the hell are you still alive after that? It's incredible. So self-leadership on that journey. You've ran so many incredible, challenging races, but that journey in particular, 50, 50, 50, what did you learn about yourself?
I learned that I was better than I thought I was, and that I could go further than I thought I could. So I had obviously a lot of doubts going into it because people were uncertain whether it was possible. I was uncertain whether it was possible. And I said, that all you can do is get up every morning and have the same commitment to be the best Dean that Dean can be, just to give it your all from the moment you wake until the moment you go back to sleep. And just applying that, that very simple formula, just I'm going to be the best I can be at every moment for 50 days, got me through it. So, I learned that great things don't happen at once, that they happen over time. They accumulate, and 50 days of marathoning proved to me that, if you have that stick-to-itness, if you have the same commitment just to be the best that you can, give it your all, that you can achieve greatness.
That's just amazing. And when I think of that, the idea of incrementalism comes to mind, that, building up to doing 50 marathons in 50 consecutive days, that would be, multiple years or decades of incrementally committing to self-discipline, to running, right?
I think, again, going back to my Greek roots, we basically are the sum of our habits. So the things we do, to your point, every moment, every day, incrementally build us into who we are. And certainly the 50 marathons is a prime example of that.
And when you there'll be the listener listening right now going, why 50 marathons? What was the internal driver to do that? So for you, what was it that you were setting out to do personally? I know that you get the 50 and 50 and 50, but there's something internally, that intrinsic driver. What was that was really driving you?
I think it was curiosity. I think that, to me, running is a pursuit of excellence. And to me, running is about pushing the limits of, breaking down limitations. And I thought, if I can do this, I'll prove to myself that really nothing is impossible. And these lessons would carry over from running into life. That was one of the drivers. The other driver was that I didn't want it to be just about me. I wanted to involve other people, because I thought, if I go out and do this, that's great. I can pound my chest and say, look what I did. But I thought it would be more powerful if I invited others to come and join me at marathons along the way, and engaged other people to kind of live vicariously through this experience. So over the course of the 50 marathons, I had, several thousand runners come out and join me, some for more than one marathon. A couple actually ran 6 marathons with me, 6 of the 50. And it was great. It just made it about more than just me. It gave it a bigger deeper meaning. It was a more richer event, I think, because others could participate.
That's beautiful. And in terms of the team around you, when we talk to your family, when I read A Runner's High, I got a really strong feeling that family sits front and center for you. You think a lot about them before running, during running, and after. So that journey for your family, what's that been like when you've been running, you've been, pushing the limits personally and physically? How has that impacted positively or negatively those connections within your family?
I hope I've set a good example, especially for my kids, because they've always known me as this crazy ultra marathoner that's been out doing these these seemingly impossible endeavors around the globe. I mean, I've run a marathon to the South Pole. I've run across Death Valley in the middle of summer. I've done things that are pretty outrageous. And I think the biggest lesson is that I still love it, even after doing it for 30 years, almost 3 decades of running ultra marathons. I still get up every morning and have a longing to pursue these incredible and adventurous sort of pursuits. So I think that commitment and that lifelong devotion to my passion hopefully has shown them that you can make your dreams come true if you work hard enough.
I love that. And you mentioned something a moment ago just around those perceived limits and those limitations, and you were surprised that you could push through those. So where do those limits, where do you believe those perceptions and those limits come from that we place upon ourselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that we look around us and we look at what others are achieving or not achieving. And that's kind of how we set the ceiling for how high we can climb. And I think only through, biting off more than you can chew, of taking on more than you thought you were capable, do you break down those limitations. I think you need first to know your limitations and be aware of those before you can exceed them. So to me, running one marathon was hard enough. The thought of, running maybe 10 marathons in a row was daunting. And the idea of running a marathon in every of the US states in 50 consecutive days was terrifying and seemingly impossible. So I set my sights on that, and somehow, 50 days later, I got through it.
It's incredible. And those moments of self-doubt, like whether we're on a sports field, whether we're running a corporate, we have self-doubt. So for you, when the self-doubt creeped in, like, oh, I'm so sore, I've got to stop, I can't go any further. Were there any mental moves, any self-talk, anything that you used, a strategy that helps you to push through that self-doubt?
Yeah, I mean, I knew my goal. I knew what I was trying to achieve, so I knew where the direction I was heading. And there were certainly many moments along the way where I thought, I can't do this. I mean, I remember getting out of bed on marathon number 19, and I couldn't even put my foot on the floor. My feet were so tender, my legs hurt so much, I couldn't get out of bed. And I thought, you can't even, make it from this hotel bed to the sink. How are you going to run a marathon today, let alone 31 more marathons in 31 days? And at that point, I said, okay, it's expected. The problem is that you're thinking too much. Don't think, just execute. So I tried my best to be in the here and now, and in the present moment of time, not to think about the future, not to reflect on the past, not to be checking off boxes on how many marathons I'd completed and how many were left to go, just to be the very best I could be in that instant of time. So I got very granular. I said, just get to the sink, splash some water in your face. Okay. Go to your kit and put on your running gear, lace up your shoe, one shoe at a time, get out the door, get to the starting line, take a step when the gun goes off, take another step. And really, that was how I did it. I was in the here and now and not thinking about the future, just knowing that the goal is 50 marathons, and to get there, you need to be the best you can at every moment, and that's how I did it.
Such great insights. I think that we can all apply in any field. And I wanted to ask you as well, I see that you work with a lot of incredible companies, some of the world's greatest companies. So how can the lessons you've learned from running be applied to the business world?
Well, I think that, to me, having worked with so many companies, so many great brands over the years, I've learned a lot of things. One, I've learned that people change. When you work with a company for decades, there's a lot of employee turnover. So a lot of those relationships, get reshuffled or lost along the way. But I think the things that stick are really authenticity more than anything else. I think that as a marketer myself, people can spot hypocrisy. People are really sharp and perceptive, and I think the message of being authentic, of walking the walk and talking the talk, is the greatest message that great companies bring to their customers and their fans. And there's no way around that authenticity. Flash, glamour, buzz, all that stuff is kind of short-lived, but it always, to me, gets back to, are you authentic? Are you using the products? Are you loving the products? Are you continually, trying to improve upon the products and the messaging? So that's the biggest lesson to me, is just to be authentic. And again, I think that comes back to my Greekness. The Oracle at Delphi just said, know thyself and be thyself. So I've learned, over the course of several decades, doing what I do, I've learned about who I am, and I've learned just to be who I am.
And it's interesting because I honestly think that a lot of listeners right now will be asking, like, who am I? How do I figure out who I am? So this idea of pushing yourself physically, really in really intense ways through ultramarathon running, or for others it may be F45, for others it may be rowing, hill climbing, whatever it might be. How can that physical endurance and pushing yourself past your limits help you discover who you truly are?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, I say that everyone who's interested in truly growing needs to run a marathon. And a lot of people say, oh, that's impossible. Like, that's someone else. I could never run a marathon. And that's why you need to run a marathon, because you think it's impossible. And the marathon teaches you so much about yourself. I guarantee to you that you'll cross the finish line as a different person than the one that was starting at the starting line. You learn about who you are through basically breaking yourself down and adversity. So how do you confront adversity? What do you do when things really, really hurt? I mean, and I'm talking really hurt. And you're really beat up and you're in so much pain, you don't think you can take another step forward. That's when you see your true colors. You see how you respond to it. You see how you react, and you learn. And, not everything you see you might like. I mean, you might decide you're going to drop out of a race and not finish the marathon. And that's very revealing. And that's, that's as powerful and as profound a lesson as finishing the marathon. So I just think that to know thyself, you really need to push thyself. And to me, the best way to push thyself is through physicality. And the simplest form of physicality is running. It doesn't get any simpler. You can just walk out your front door and start running and see how far you can go.
And for the person that goes, no, you know what, I've got an injury. It's been there for years. What's your response to that person that comes up with the self obstacles and excuses?
I think the only excuse is you. I hear that all the time. Well, I've got this niggle in my knee, or I've got a bad back, and I usually don't comment on such a thing, because if someone's overweight and they say, I got a bad back. Well, maybe you need to lose a bit of weight and start doing, sit-ups and exercising. But I think that the people that are listening to this saying, oh, I could never do it because I've got this issue or that issue, I think they're the ones who really need to do it the most. So I short of a medical issue where, you got a pin in your knee or something like that, if it's just some niggling in your pant, in your back, or you just, you've never been a good runner, quote unquote, or you just don't like to run. I think that those are the very reasons you need to take on the marathon.
I love it. Setting the gauntlet down. I love it. So good.
And I promise you'll hate me at the finish, but you'll also love me at the finish.
Well, Dean, I've never run a marathon. In fact, my partner Caroline, we're going down to support her at the Queenstown Marathon the end of this month. So I think you're inspiring me to maybe actually set a line in the sand for next year and actually do a marathon, get signed up and start training.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you go to a marathon and spectate, it's infectious. There's just something about watching others kind of in the battle that makes you want to join in and be part of it. So, I encourage you to be there for her and cheer her on and maybe get absorbed in the energy of it. And, the first thing I always say to people is sign up, choose a race at an appropriate duration in the future, maybe 6 or 9 months, and register. Yeah. And that's commitment. Once you've signed up, then I've got a goal ahead of me. And it kind of, reverse engineers you into taking action.
It's interesting because I also wanted to ask you around vision, like how important it is to have a clear vision. And I firmly believe once we have visions, we can reverse engineer from there. But for you in your life, when you go to those and do those big goals, have you always been clear on, hey, that's what I want to do, that's why I want to do it? Or has it been haphazard?
Well, no, I mean, I think that to me, there's this idea of never stop exploring. So to me, running, is as much about adventure and exploration as it is about the act of putting one foot in front of the other. Running is a simple act, but it's a very diverse sport. There's people that run 100-meter dashes, and they're runners. There are 10,000-meter runners. Then there are marathon runners, and then there are people like me, ultramarathon runners, that might run for, 2 or 3 or 4 days, at a time. And that's a very different pursuit. So to me, I like combining travel with running. And that's why I look for adventures that are in unusual or, unexpected places to do these sort of ultra marathons. And I think to me, it's fascinating, as well as, it stirs the emotions for anyone who hears about something like that, or sees a video, or even an Instagram post. It's inspiring because you're being adventurous with your life, and I think that everyone likes some creativity and adventure in their life, no matter what you're doing.
No, 100% agree. And when you're doing an ultra marathon, so when we think of a marathon, we're like, whoa, that's long. But when we're thinking of ultra, like overnight, sometimes multiple nights, I mean, the mind must go into overdrive and there must be some deep thinking. So in your experiences, what's been one of your toughest or darkest moments mentally when you've been doing, a multiple day race?
I've had a lot of hallucinations. I've seen dinosaurs off in the distance. I've had hallucinations talk to me. I remember running across Death Valley one time, and I became extremely dehydrated, and I had thrown my electrolytes out of balance, and I saw an old miner 49er walking across the road toward me. One of the gold miners from California. He had a big gray beard, and he had overalls, and I noticed he was carrying a gold pan. And when he reached me, he held out the gold pan and he said, water, water, I need water. And I was carrying a handheld water bottle, and I turned it over to aspirate some water into his gold pan. And I heard the water sizzling on the pavement. And I realized it was a hallucination. So I've
Wow.
certainly, yeah, that was pretty far out.
That's amazing. And how do you respond to adversity, those tough moments that really test you? What's your response under extreme adversity?
Yeah, again, people say, what do you think about when things get really, really tough? And I don't think. I think thinking is the problem, because you start to rationalize, you start to make sense of it, you try to figure out what's going on, and that just cascades into, you know, doubt. So when things get really, really tough, again, I turn very much inward and just focus on the here and now, the present moment of time, and literally just say, take your next step to the best of your ability. Take your next step to the best of your ability. Earlier this year, I ran a 100-mile, or 162-kilometer race in Patagonia, in South America, and in the middle of the night, a snowstorm moved in, and I was up in the mountains on this ridge line, and it was sleeting and snowing sideways. And it was the middle of the night, and it was a very steep ridge line. On either side of me, there were real steep cliffs. And, I had a headlamp on, and I had, full Gore-Tex kit, and the wind must have been blowing, 30, 40, maybe 50 kilometers an hour. And everything was just rattling. I mean, I couldn't see because the snow was blowing sideways, and my light was just illuminating this blowing snow. And I had no idea how long the storm would last. What could I do besides just focus on taking my next step to the best of my ability? So I literally tuned out everything except for my foot and the ground in front of me. And that went on for about 4 hours, where all I didn't think of anything except, where's your foot going to go? Where's your next footstep going to go? Where's your next footstep to go? And it's almost like a Zen-like trance you put yourself into, and you really forget about the pain. You forget about how much further you've got to go. You forget about everything. And when you come out of something like that, it's very cleansing, actually. You feel almost rejuvenated and reborn, because for a few hours you've kind of been removed from reality. And to me, that's it just kind of rebirths you in a way.
That's incredible. And as you're saying that, I'm really thinking about, let's say, someone who's in professional sports, or even say running a business, and they've got ultra marathon, and that's in the form of a large project or a year-long goal. And along the way, they're feeling a little disoriented or tired. So with your ultra marathon running, do you take breaks? Do you slow to a walk when required? Do you take the time to refuel? Are there certain things you do just to make sure you can get across the finish line?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a quote. You don't have to go fast. You just have to go. So there are highs and lows, and an ultra marathon is like a big business project. It's daunting, it's overwhelming, it's seemingly impossible. And you go into it, when the gun goes off, you're screaming out of the gates, you're cheering, there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of adrenaline. But that wears down, it wears out. And trying to keep the momentum at the midpoint when things really suck, when there's a lot of self-doubt, like are you going to be able to finish? That's when character is built. That's when you really see what you're made of and who you are.
And that narrative, the self-talk, the incantations, affirmations, is there anything that you've used that's really helped you just to push forward to that next step?
I think that, I think I'm not the only one that does this, but you kind of start referring to yourself in the third person. Like, you can do this, kind of talking to someone else, like, you've been here before, it's been this bad before, you can do this. So I just keep saying, you can. And whether that helps or not, or whether that just helps to put your mind in the current moment instead of thinking about the future or anything else, I'm not quite sure. But the other thing that I've really learned to appreciate is, there's a saying, embrace the suck.
Yeah.
That really, when things get really bad, like saying to myself, I don't know if it's ever been this horrible. Like this is so miserable. This is so bleak. It's fantastic. Like I've never been this low. I've never had things this bad. So really, experiencing the full range of human emotions, from the high of the starting gun going off, just to the low of the misery of being stuck on a ridge in a snowstorm, freezing, uncertain if you're going to live through the night, to back to the high of crossing the finish line and having a medal put around your neck.
I love that. And Dean, I remember something from the book. It really touched me. And you'd said, running taught me that the pursuit of a passion mattered more than the passion itself. And I just wanted to ask you what that meant to you, and why the pursuit of a passion is so important.
Yeah, I think that I'm a runner, and that's what I am. It's a simple act. It's nothing intellectual. It's nothing sophisticated, but it's who I am, and I pursue that to the best of my ability, with heartfelt intensity, with all of my faculties entirely committed to being the best runner that I can be. And I think that's brought a lot of internal satisfaction and a lot of internal reward. I think, someone who's aspiring to be a Nobel Prize winner, they're certainly just as committed, maybe more so committed than I am. And that's, bringing them a lot of reward. Not everyone's going to win a Nobel Prize. Not everyone's going to be, the president of a country. But everyone can be the best that they can be, and whatever their pursuit might be. So I think everyone loves something. And I always say to people, when they say, I'm not satisfied with my life, with my career, I always say to them, just on a piece of paper, free form, write down, if you woke up tomorrow morning and your life was exactly as you wanted it to be, what would that look like? Where would you live? What car would you be driving? What would you be doing? And a lot of people think, oh, that's easy. I'd be drinking margaritas on Tahiti. But then they really think it through, and they think, that really wouldn't be that fulfilling. I'd like to be a blank, whatever that might be. And I think that everyone can answer that question. Like, I really, this is who I am. I want to be a poet, or I want to be a basket weaver. Whatever that is, if you pursue that to the best of your ability, it's going to bring you fulfillment.
And that really aligns with what you said at the start of our conversation, just around being in the pursuit of excellence. And it's, when I think of you, when I read your book, that when I see what you've done in your career, that you're constantly in process, constantly in the pursuit of that excellence.
Yeah, I think
endurance.
I think that's one of the reasons I write as well, because you just cannot write the perfect book, and writing is every bit as hard as ultramarathon, if not more difficult. So I like these pursuits where it's a process. You can never write the perfect book, that you're always needing just to improve upon the things you've already said and written. And that to me is it talks about the journey being more rewarding than crossing the finish line.
And it's so true. When you look at any great journey, it's the journey that you remember. It's not necessarily the gold medal at the end, right?
Yeah, that's so true. And the other thing that I think a lot of people overlook is it's the little moments in life that we most cherish. I mean, I look back on my career, and yeah, I've been on the podium, and I've had accolades. I'm yeah, I've won a lot of awards, that kind of thing. And those are gratifying moments. But, then I look back at the times where, I was running with my daughter. The first 10K we did was on her 10th birthday. We ran a 10K together. And it was that moment that I cherished the most.
Mm, that's beautiful. That's so lovely. And in the book, you talked as well about Nicholas coming along to one of the big races and what it meant to you and what it meant for your connection with him. So what are some of those other magic moments that you've shared with your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, and no runner is an island. I mean, as anyone listening to this who's a runner or an athlete knows, it's a very divisive pursuit. I mean, you're out there by yourself. It's very self-absorbing. So this brings people together, or it blows relationships to smithereens. And thankfully, my running has brought my family together. And I've taken them on almost all of my adventures. I mean, my kids were along with me for the 50 marathons in 50 states. My mom is a retired school teacher, and she would get the lesson plans for my kids' school every week, and they would do their homework with her. So they've grown up in this kind of atmosphere, and it's quirky. It's a different type of lifestyle, and I hope that that's captured in my books. I mean, so much of my books are about family. And I think that the family is so important, and thankfully my family's fairly colorful, so they make a good cast of characters.
Oh, it's brilliant just to hear in the banter between your mum and your dad, and yeah, the trips away that you have. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In fact, I highlighted so many inspiring quotes and takeaways in the book, and one that really stuck out. It was really simple but profound. Was that running a marathon doesn't just build character; it also reveals it.
Yeah, and I think again that's why I encourage people to sign up for a marathon, because it reveals character to yourself, and you learn about your weaknesses and your vulnerabilities, and I think until you expose yourself to those, you don't really know who you are.
And when you do expose those, and which you have, what's the next step? What's that next foot forward in terms of, hey, now I've exposed it. I know where I'm vulnerable. I know where, there's maybe an ugly side there or a shadow. What's the next step? What do you do with that?
I think you can improve upon it. I think when you see more deeply into your character and there are flaws that you notice, you're more aware of it. I think self-improvement starts with awareness, and again, you can't be truly aware of yourself until you put yourself in very adverse situations. And once you have those traits revealed, you can work on them. You're aware that, I'm kind of, I'm not as gritty as I thought I was, and I give up a little bit too easily, or I'm too quick to make excuses. You learn this about yourself, and in future pursuits, when you're in a similar situation, you reflect back and you say, I made an excuse and got out of it last time I was here, but this time I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick it out. So again, I think that running a marathon increases your self-awareness tenfold.
And the greats, if we look at any field, the people who we would regard as the greats, they tend to stay in the game a lot longer than their competitors. So for you, how do you remain entirely in the game? And throughout your season of running, your life of running, how have you remained in the game?
I don't know. I don't know if it's just boneheaded determination and discipline, because people say, it's amazing that you've been doing this for 3 decades and you still love to run. And they say, aren't there ever moments where you just don't want to run? And yeah, there are plenty of moments. And at those moments, I force myself to run. So I love the pursuit of physical excellence, and I guess it's in my DNA. But yeah, I mean, I look through these, I just saw a list from Men's Health of like the 50 fittest people in America, and I'm on the list, and no
Love
one
it.
says, hey, he's 60 years old. I mean, you're looking at these other people, they're mostly in their 20s, or some people in their 30s, or they're saying, these people in their 30s are kind of getting old, and they're kind of, their game is over. And here's this like 60-year-old guy that's still running 100-mile ultra marathons, but that never gets mentioned. I'm just still on these lists, and I kind of see these lists, and I look, and I kind of laugh to myself, like, how am I still on this list when everyone else is, 20 or 30 years younger than me?
I think that's amazing.
Well,
I love it.
the other thing is that, I know that physical fitness is so important in what I do, and physical health. So, my whole lifestyle is revolved around activity and fitness. I mean, even right now, as we're doing this interview, I'm standing up. I never sit down from the moment I get out of bed in the morning until the moment I go back to sleep. I'm doing all my writing standing up. My gym, I've got an outdoor gym, and I'm looking out the window at my gym. So I've made it very easy for me to be active, and I think that that has been conducive to my longevity.
It's interesting you say that. I was chatting with Dr. Haley Perlis a few months ago, and she works with Olympians and she's a sports psychologist. We were talking about developing the habit of movement and exercise, and she suggested, look, a lot of people say, look, I'll do 5 days on, 2 days off, and her feeling was that no, what you want to try and achieve is every day move your body, make it a daily habit, even if it's 15 minutes, but just move. So what do you do to keep that momentum happening? Is it a daily commitment to movement? Is it 4 on, 3 off?
No, it's a daily commitment. And, I kind of have been following this somewhat, hard, easy regime, and that's very high level. So, like a couple of days ago on Sunday, I did a really hard 50-kilometer run. And yesterday, I did a very easy 5-kilometer walk, jog, if you will. So every day doing something, but some days pushing much harder, other days going a little bit easier. People say, learn to listen to your body. If I listen to my body, I'd be sitting on the couch, eating potato chips, drinking beer, right? I mean, that's what you want to do. That's what's going to bring you the most pleasure. But to me, it's about more tuning into the fact that every day I'm going to get up and move. And again, I encourage people listening, just try it a couple days a week. Try saying that you're not going to sit down from the moment you get out of bed until the moment you go back to sleep. Now, obviously, if I'm getting in a car to drive somewhere, or if I've got to fly somewhere, I'm sitting down. But on those days when you don't have to sit down, try standing all day. Just something simple like that. And I mean, bounce around on your toes and see how you feel after standing up all day.
Well, Dean, I just got off my stool and I'm standing right now. I'm listening. I love it. What's next for you? What excites you? What's on the cards for the next 12 months that gets you fizzed and excited?
I mean, this is going to be very random to you and maybe unexpected, but I just finished writing a screenplay.
Wow.
A Hollywood screenplay. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, but I mean, I've written 2 screenplays now. The first was one based on my first book, Ultramarathon Man. So you kind of know the story. If you read my book, you kind of know the storyline of that movie, and that's more linear. The second script I just wrote is about Socrates, the ancient philosopher. So it's really about it's set in 400 BC in ancient Athens, and it's quirky, it's unexpected, and it also combines life lessons with the storyline. So, my goal was to write a story that was, from the moment the opening scene to the closing scene, you're glued to the screen. And part of that to me was you can't, a movie about an ancient philosopher, you can't fill it with action scenes. So I thought, if there's not killing, if there's not bloodshed, if there's not action, how do you hold an audience attention? And I thought, you educate them in quirky and unexpected and profound ways. So anyway, that you can tell I'm very passionate about this, and I just finished it. So that is, kind of absorbed my passions for the past year on and off as I've been working on it. Concurrently, I'm planning another run, a long run with a friend of mine, from the lowest point on Earth to the highest point on Earth. So we're looking at probably 2024, because we're working with a film production company that's going to document it, but that's in the works. So wow. You probably know the highest point on Earth.
Yeah.
And it's not a trick question. It's Mount Everest. And the lowest point on Earth is the Dead Sea. So we're going to try to run either, depending on the route we choose, either about 3,000 miles or about 5,000 miles from the Dead Sea to the top of Mount Everest.
Wow. And I imagine not only would there be logistics challenge, but there would be geopolitical challenges. There'd be potential threats to your personal safety.
Well, that's why I said it's either about 3,000 miles or 5,000 miles, because the shorter route goes through Iraq and Iran. And the State Department, the U.S. State Department, is saying, no, you're not going to be able to do this. And so the longer route is going up through the stands, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. But it's funny, I've mentioned this endeavor in a couple of interviews, and I have so many people, especially from Iran, that have contacted me on social media and said, look, you have to come through our country. Like there are runners here, and we're just like you, and we will meet you guys at our border, and we will have 100 people running with you every day across our country. And wow. To me, that just speaks to something higher than our differences. It's this running, uniting people. The very simple act of putting one foot in front of the other is something universal. Yeah, the God we worship might be different. The color of our skin might be different. The language we speak, but running unites us. So I am pushing as hard as I can. That's one of the reasons it's taking so long to organize this, is I really want to go through Iraq and Iran.
I think that'll be incredible, just to follow that journey and to go from the lowest point to the highest point through all those ups and downs of what you're going to have to achieve to get there. It'll be phenomenal. And on your screenplay, after we've finished our conversation, I want to introduce you to an incredible guy, fellow American called Patrick Mosher. He runs an amazing program called the Wisdom Council. He just got back with his Wisdom Council members from the Oracle at the Delphi. And I think you and him would have an incredible conversation around Socrates, and yeah, he's right into it.
I'd love to get connected with him. I've been to Delphi a number of times. I actually carried the Olympic torch in Greece across Delphi.
Wow, that's amazing. I'll definitely introduce you guys. I'll do that right after. Now, before we wrap up, I've got one question. I always save this to the end, and if we were to fast forward to the very end of your life, it's the last day, it's your last day, and someone very young, maybe a grandchild, just a young person within your family network, comes up and asks you this question: Dean, how can I lead my life on purpose? What would your advice or feedback be to them?
This is going to be, again, a very Greek answer, but be who you are.
I love it. I love it.
There was silence.
I really do.
I don't know if the silence was a good thing or a bad thing, but
I'm letting that land with
Mm.
me and just take that in and be who you are. And it's interesting you say that, because Bronnie Ware, she wrote an incredible book. She was a palliative care nurse, and she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she spent a lot of time with people on their last days. And the number one regret was that we spend a large part of our lives worried about what other people think of us, and we then act and behave accordingly to impress others. And what you've just said is just so striking and so powerful. Be who you are. It's amazing.
Well, and there's another quote I have that I just love. I don't know how it sits with others, but I always say that nobody wants their last thought to be, I wish I would have laughed more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have some fun with life. I mean, I'll leave you with a movie called Zorba the Greek. And
Yes.
it's an old movie. It's an old book by a Greek author that I just love. And it's so irreverent, and it so speaks to life being fun. I mean, life being something to celebrate. And, essentially his business just goes to hell in a handbasket. And the last scene is him with his buddy drinking some ouzo on a beach, Greek dancing. Yeah, so celebrate life as well.
I love it. Yeah, I've got great memories of ouzo from the days in Falaraki in Greece, that's for sure. We'll not go there.
That's for another episode of the podcast. Yeah.
100%. Hey, Dean, I just want to say a massive thank you. I have a feeling this is not the last time we will speak or connect, and I'll be following your journey. And I want everyone that's listening right now, if they're on their phones, they can either go to audiobooks, they can go to Amazon or their local bookseller and order a copy of A Runner's High. It was truly an incredible book. I learned a lot about myself. There's a few challenges that were set out in there, that particularly around self-discovery, that have really excited me. So it's a great book. If you're a runner, you're going to love it. If you're not a runner, you're going to love it. So I'll put the link in the show notes for people to grab a copy. And yeah, I'm excited to see what the next year or two brings for you, Dean.
I appreciate you being such a gracious host, and I hope I didn't bore you senseless, and I hope the audience learned something from our conversation. But I very much enjoyed our time together.
Oh, thank you so much, Dean. We'll talk soon.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed the content today, please smash that subscribe button below. And if you want to become part of my community, I've got an amazing free Facebook group. Please come and join us. The link is in the description below. And also, if you've got any questions about today's session, I'd love to know. Just comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you guys. Have the most amazing day.